Welcome back to the number one television show in the history of the universe, everyone. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown. All three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing Mark Lawrence, King of Thorns. This is book number 2 in his Broken Empire series. Now, I reviewed book number 1 about a couple years ago, Prince of Thorns. It was a dope, seriously dope book. And now we are reviewing King of Thorns, and then book 3 in the trilogy is Emperor of Thorns. And let's just talk about the covers first, because you know I love graphic design and cover illustration. Now, the covers of all 3 books were done by an illustrator named Jason Chan, and you know, this is one of my favorite book covers of all time. Book number 2 is pretty cool, and book number 3 is pretty cool too. They all look good together. Let's put them all together here so we can see what they all look like. This is what they all look like facing out. Just absolute gorgeousness. So the publisher gets an A+ for the covers, especially the way they made the spines all match, because that's so important to book collectors, that the spines match and look like they belong together. So good job, the publisher, who is Ace Books. Way to go. A+ for that. Now let's talk about this book specifically. There is a map. You know, there's the good covers. There's also a map, because all fantasy books need a good map. And this one is cool. It's kind of a warped version of Europe. So this is this series is set in like a post-apocalyptical Earth, kind of where things have flooded. This just like takes place way in the future, where things have gone like medieval. It's very medieval. This book, with hints and traces of modern technology, sort of scattered about the landscape. You know, pistols and stuff. I mean, I'm not giving away any spoilers here, but there's like, at one point in time, they find a Colt 45 pistol in the book. And it really reminiscent of Gene Wolfe's Shadow of the Torturer, of his, yeah, I've got those up here, yeah. If you've seen my reviews of the Gene Wolfe books, this landscape that Severian walks through is very similar to the landscape that our main character, Jorg Ancrath, is walking through. So I compare it quite a bit to Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, Shadow of the Torturer, that thing. So let's just talk about, right from the beginning I was reading, and the first thing that struck me was just the gorgeously written, dark, brutal, and haunting prose that Mark Lawrence is capable of. Just one of the better writing craftsmen in the genre. It's just unmistakable. I mean, you can't not read this and be impressed. I don't know if that sentence made sense. His writing is impressive. That's the way I should have phrased that. Anyway, like I said, landscape, post-apocalyptical. Our main character is Jorg Ancrath. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's Jorg. I don't know whether it's Jorg, George, Georgie, Jorge, Ancrath, Ancrat, Ancrath. I was just pronouncing it Jorg. No, I was pronouncing it, as I was reading it, I was pronouncing it Jorg. I can't even say it now. I was pronouncing it Jorg Ancrath. That's the way I pronounced it. And if I'm fucking it up, people let me know in the comments. Anyway, the first book, Prince of Thorns, was about Jorg when he was a 13-year-old boy, and he was very sociopathic. He was a bully. He was just a brutal killer. He was out to get revenge from his father, and he was out just raping and pillaging across the land. It was a very controversial book when it first came out, because our hero wasn't just an anti-hero. He was just an absolute bad kid, just an evil person. And a lot of people didn't like that. But I liked it because, not that I like evil people, but I liked Mark Lawrence's writing style, and I kind of liked just the bizarro personality that he had created in Jorg, this terrorizing kid. And the kid had reasons to be who he was. And Mark Lawrence made a good case for why his story should be told in the way that it was told. And I really, really enjoyed book one. Now we get to book two. We get to book two, and Jorg is no longer 13. He is now 18. He's going to be married, which just does not seem like a very good idea for this guy. Because, well, for a few reasons. Just he doesn't seem like marriage material. No father would want their daughter to marry Jorg. Let's just say that. But this girl that he's going to marry, Miana, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one right either, Miana, she's only 12, and she's probably as sociopathic as he is. So it's kind of like maybe going to be an okay marriage. I don't know, two sociopaths together. That should be pleasant. It should just work. Yeah, no, I'm like, marriage is tough enough, right? When you've got two kind-hearted people that treat each other well, it can still go sideways. When you've got two very, very young, sociopathic, narcissistic, evil killers, yeah, that's gonna work. It'll be fine. It's gonna be fine. Anyway, that's one part of the plot. There's also flashbacks. So half of this book takes place in the present, where Jorg is 18. The other half of the book flashbacks to when he's 15. And I'm not a huge fan of flashbacks. Now, it kind of is what was going on in a little bit of the first book. And I understand why Mark Lawrence is doing this. He makes it work better than I could ever make it work as a writer. Well, I would never try to make it work. It's difficult. I like, linear storytelling. Like, here's the beginning, here's the end. Not here's the beginning, here's a flashback over here, and then here's a then. I don't like that, and I would never attempt it because I just wouldn't be able to pull it off. Mark Lawrence can pull it off, and Mark Lawrence in the story makes a good case for why he's doing it. And so I just roll with it. And I liked it. It's a good story. So it's a good story in that if you like kind of Game of Thrones, grim, dark type evil people doing evil things to each other all throughout, it is fantastic. It's very Joe Abercrombie-esque, very R. Scott Baker-esque, very Game of Thrones-esque, very Mark Lawrence-esque. It is, but the thing that I love most about it is the landscape. He does a good job of describing where the characters are and what they're walking through and what they're seeing, and use recognizable places like the Alps and the Eiger Mountain show up. And it's just the writing and the acts of war that are in here. It's just riveting. Actually, speaking of war, we know that this is a post-apocalyptic Earth because the characters are oftentimes quoting books that we know, like The Art of War and things like that. They find relics here and there amongst the rubble of a society that predated them that had technology and books and things like that. And a lot of that is passed on. A lot of the literature has been passed on to these characters. And so they do quote like different works of art from our time. Pretty cool. I like it. I love this series. I think it's one of the best fantasy series out there. I think if you saw my top 40 fantasy series of all time book list, these books made it. So I'm giving this a solid just 10 out of 10. I almost want to knock it down to like a 9.75 or a 9.5 because the flashbacks just ain't my thing. A literary thing that I just have never been fond of. But beyond that, everything else is perfect.